Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Memphasys Shareholder webinar. My name is David Tasker, and I'll be your host today. We're pleased to have with us Dr. David Ali, CEO and Managing Director of Memphasys, who will provide an update on the company's progress and outlook. Following his presentation, we'll move into a live Q&A session where I'll put your questions to David and also to Non-Executive Director Marjan Mikel, who will join us for that discussion. We encourage you to type your questions into the Q&A box throughout the presentation, and we'll cover as many as we can. We have also received a number of questions prior to the webinar commencing, and we'll put them into the mix as well. With that, let me hand over to Dr. David Ali. David, the floor is yours. David, if I could get you to unmute yourself and turn on your camera, we'll be good to go.
Are we good now?
Okay. Got you. No
Sorry
problem.
about that.
No problem.
Technology. Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. David Ali, and I'm the Managing Director of Memphasys, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. This is a really important update for our company and for you, our shareholders. Over the next 20 minutes, I'll take you through the progress that we've made, the commercialisation of Felix, our capital management, and why we actually believe that Memphasys is now positioned for significant growth, and it is. At the end, I'll open up the floor for questions, and I'll be joined by our Non-Executive Director, Mr. Marjan Mikel, to share the board's perspective as well. Before I begin, I'd like to share with you where we have come from and our way forward. As you know, for the past few years, our team has been validating the science and building the Felix platform. Now that work is actually complete, and today we are a company entering a commercial phase, a company building revenue and being able to scale this global opportunity with Felix and for Felix. Memphasys as a company is now firmly focused on commercial execution. Our mission now is very, very clear. It's to revolutionize male fertility treatment with Felix, the world's first automated electrophoretic sperm separation system for IVF, something that's never been done before. Now, I'd like to take you through some investment highlights. There are several reasons why MEM is actually a compelling investment right now. Felix itself runs on a cartridge-based model, giving us a very predictable and recurring revenue. Each cartridge sells for between $80 to $150 AUD. With IVF clinics actually using the Felix cartridge, Memphasys can expect to generate between $100,000 and $300,000 in revenue each year per clinic, depending on the size of the clinic, and of course larger clinics will generate more revenue. Importantly, the target cost of goods is now below $40 per cartridge, and this is a fantastic achievement because it means that we can now get margins of more than 60% per cartridge. Recently, we've made a huge decision, and I think a very prudent decision, to pivot away from just relying on distributors and move more into a direct sales model. And this gives us far more control over our customer base, our customer engagement, the ability to obtain insights, but most importantly, our market rollout. We get to make the decisions about how the product is rolled out into the market, not somebody else. We've already signed a landmark 5-year agreement with International Technical Legacy, or ITL, which covers the Middle East, and just recently we've secured Turkey in the EU under that same agreement. And that agreement itself is worth $390,000 and that will be realised once the CE mark approval is actually achieved. You know that we have completed our clinical trial, but now our CE mark submission has been lodged, and approval is expected before financial year 2026, and that will unlock the European market with more than 1,400 clinics across the EU. And this was a very important strategic decision for us to make so that we could access the larger markets a lot faster through the commercialization process. Now I'd like to talk about why Felix actually matters. Infertility affects 1 in 6 couples worldwide, and this is a problem that's actually growing globally. So the market is going to increase. Male factors contribute to around 50% of the problem in terms of fertility. Yet there's been little attention paid to the male infertility side of the problem, and that's basically not changed for the last 40 years. However, a product like Felix now changes that. Felix is fast and completes sperm preparation in under 6 minutes, compared to the usual processes that take anywhere between 40 to 60 minutes. Felix is safe with less DNA damage, which means better embryo quality, higher embryo clinical utilization, and more embryos are produced. It's consistent because it's an automated system, unlike the other processes that currently exist, and it's not reliant upon the operator's skill. Anybody can use it once they're trained. But most importantly, I think for the end user, it's an extremely profitable system for clinics because it actually increases the throughput and improves the workflow within the clinics, which then is a huge benefit for the clinics who choose to use it in terms of operational costs and the savings within those operational costs. And I think that that's something that will certainly drive the access to Felix within those clinics. All of these factors really make Felix the first and only automated system that combines speed, quality, and scalability. Now, I'd like to discuss the market opportunity because I'm sure you're all interested in that. The global IVF market today is worth around $37 billion and is expected to more than double to $85 billion by the year 2034. Now, that's a huge market, and even if we capture a small slice of that market, that will deliver significant and meaningful revenue to Memphasys. Our go-to-market strategy is in fact now staged. First, we will target low regulation markets where we can enter quickly. Japan is already live and have already continually placed reordering of the cartridges. We've signed a major distribution agreement with the Middle East, with International Technical Legacy, and that's across 15 countries in the Middle East, and that represents some 350 IVF clinics, and that in itself is a huge opportunity and one which will grow year by year and present increasing revenues for the company as there's more and more uptake of the product. We're also in advanced negotiations with New Zealand, Canada, and India. And once our CE mark approval comes through, we will then be able to scale into Europe. And as I said before, the 1,400 clinics that exist in Europe, we will also be able to move into Australia and other major markets that reciprocally accept the CE mark registration. Now, I'd like to briefly discuss our commercial model that we have in place. And I think that this is extremely important because this commercial model, I think, will be able to obtain significant revenue for the company. And basically, we're operating by a razor and blade model. Clinics will buy the Felix console only once at either a low price or, depending on the size of the orders that they're likely to place, we may not even charge them for an upfront cost for the console because that can be amortized against the ongoing sales of our cartridges. But what they will have to pay for is every cartridge that is used per cycle. And that is the meaningful part of our revenue generation, because that means recurring high margin revenue for every single patient treated. For context, a single clinic performing 20 to 30 cycles per week can generate hundreds of cartridge cycles annually. Now let's look at how we're going to actually drive our margins. We are going to be very, very disciplined in how we manage costs. We've cut our operational expenditure down to around 40%, from $3 million to $1.8 million in 2006. And if you remember previously, about 18 months ago, we managed to make a reduction of about $1.5 million. So throughout the process, we've actually kept on reducing our costs. At the same time, we've been making great strides in improving our manufacturing with reduced cost of goods, looking at our supply chain so that we can bring the cartridge cost down as low as we possibly can, and as I said before, below $40. And that ensures a good profit margin for the company, as well as competitive pricing, and gives us the ability to continue to scale as we grow. I think you're all interested probably in an update on the funding that we've recently undertaken. So we've recently completed a placement of $840,000 with strong support from both existing and new investors. And again, thank you very much for all the ongoing support of our long-term investors and our new investors. It's helping us meet our targets. We're now undertaking a non-renounceable rights issue to raise up to $1.12 million. And these funds will be used to deliver existing contracts that we have in place and that we're going to have in place, help us to finalise our negotiations in India and Southeast Asia and other markets that accept CE mark, and give us the ability to scale up Felix manufacturing and inventory in preparation for the commercialisation of Felix over the next 12, 24 months. Importantly, and I think this is something that everybody has asked for, is that every dollar raised will be directly spent on the commercialisation of Felix. Felix is our flagship product, and it's a product that we need to get out there and we need to get it into the marketplace and get a return on investment. So Felix will now be our sole, Felix and its commercialisation will now be our sole focus. I'd like to very quickly summarise some of the activities and some of the main points around the commercialisation of Felix. Firstly, we've completed our clinical trial. Felix is clinically validated and already in use and being sold in low regulatory markets. We're beginning to generate revenue in those early entry markets. Our new partnerships with organisations like ITL and the Middle East provide scale, reach, and huge opportunities, and we will continue to look for these huge opportunities in these high-value markets. CE mark approval for the company will be ultimately transformational. We will be able to enter the global market with Felix and sell globally in any country that accepts CE mark certification. And I think there's about 28 of those countries that actually accept the CE mark certification. So it's a huge opportunity again. But more importantly, going forward, we're going to have to, and we will continue to tightly manage our costs and capital. Financial year 26 will be the year that Memphasys demonstrates commercial execution and delivers on the promise that we will be building towards. On behalf of the board and management team, I would like to thank you all as investors and long-term investors, short-term investors, for your continued support. Now, I'd like to move to the Q&A session so that some questions can be asked, and I'll be joined by our non-executive director, Mr. Marjan Mikel, who will also share the board's perspective on some key issues. Thank you.
Thanks, David, for that comprehensive update. As you've just mentioned, we will move into the Q&A session. I'll be putting forward questions that shareholders have submitted both ahead of the webinar. We did receive a number, and those that are coming through now, we will get through as many as we possibly can. We've allocated sort of 10 to 15 minutes for questions, and where possible, I'll group obvious questions together that have come from various parties, but clearly revolve around a similar topic. As David's mentioned, Marjan has now joined us, non-executive director, and also a shareholder of the company, who will also provide the board's perspective on any of their questions where appropriate. So I'm now going to dive straight into our first question. Okay. Some shareholders feel traction has been slower than expected. Why should they remain confident?
Oh, that's a great question, David, and I think that's a very, very, very fair concern. I think one of the issues we had was that initially we relied too heavily on distributors to make decisions for us, and however, those distributors didn't provide the traction that we simply hoped to achieve. Over the past 12 months, I think we've made a fantastic decision to pivot to direct sales and approach various clinics, directly. We've been able to sign a huge agreement with ITL in the Middle East, and have secured repeated cartridge orders in Japan. And I think that's the real evidence of adoption of our product, and that will continue as we move along in our journey. Marjan, perhaps you can share your opinion on how the board views this.
I think not adding in too much to what David's already said. I think one of the other things that's very much changed over the last 3 to 6 months is the laser focus that we've introduced to the organisation when it comes to resource deployment, strategic frugality, and also focusing on what it is that needs to be done to make us successful. So, as you would no doubt have seen over the last few months, we have made a concerted effort to focus our efforts on one thing and one thing only. That is taking the wonderful technology that we have that is ready for sale and focus all of our efforts on making sure that we're successful there. That's not to say that we've trashed everything else at all, but what we've basically done is put everything else on hold to make sure that we get a full focus on commercialisation of Felix. And importantly, David's done a wonderful job in making sure that contracts that we're currently negotiating are contracts that binds our partners to two things. One is a commitment to purchasing Felix. And the second thing is, which David's touched on during the presentation, is to follow what it is we as an organisation believe are key to success when it comes to the commercialisation of Felix with their customers, the IVF clinics. We ride the ship, we're directing it, and we're telling them what the special sauce is, if you will, to make sure that the clinics are taking this new technology on board.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Couple of questions here around CE mark. One person came in a little bit late, so they do apologise. CE mark approval, when is it expected, and why does it matter so much to the company? David?
Well, I think that's a transformational thing for the company in itself, David. We've submitted our CE mark in June 2025, and we expect approval before financial year 26. Now, moving to CE mark was a huge strategic decision for the company because it would open up globally for us rather than being focused within one country. So from a commercial perspective, I think it was the right thing to do. Within Europe itself, I mean, we're unlocking around 1,400 clinics immediately. And when you think about the fact that there's 28 countries globally that accept CE mark, I mean, the opportunity is huge. And currently we're getting interest from many various people across countries that who know about Felix. So I think that once we actually achieve that, I think that the path forward will be fairly quick. And I think part of the strategy that we've also got in place too is that we're actually preparing for this huge commercialization that we foresee. And we're looking at training, we're looking at supply, we're looking at how we can maximize the efficiencies in our manufacturing. So that once the adoption actually starts, that we can meet the demand for the product in the marketplace.
Marjan,
Marjan?
Sorry, I was just going to say, Marjan, do you have a view as well from a board point of view?
Yeah, I do. And a board point of view, and also my experience beyond this. I mean, it's grand final time here in Australia at the moment, right? We've got the AFL grand final this weekend and the NRL grand final the weekend after. The CE mark buys us a ticket to the game, right? That is fundamentally where we're at. Without the CE mark, we can't play. Now, that's why it's so important to us, but it'll mean nothing, absolutely nothing, unless we continue to drive and deliver on the commercialization strategies that David's presented today and the board fully endorses, right? We need to remain very laser focused on that. And I'm a shareholder as well, so I've sat on both sides of this particular presentation. And I'm really pleased to see that we are focusing on that. But as I said, the big thing with CE, it's a ticket to the game, right? That's the important piece. And without the ticket, you can't play.
Question here, or a few questions here in relation to revenue. it has been mentioned in the slide deck. What's realistic in terms of what could be generated in the near term? What are the measurements shareholders should be looking at when it comes to revenue?
Well, David, I mean, we've thought about this long and hard, and I think that we've set up a few targets. And for financial year 26, we're looking at around 2 million, and then increasing that to 6 million in financial year 27. The clinics can generate between 100 to 300 K annually each, in terms of Felix. And again, larger clinics will be able to generate more, and we will be making, strategic actions to actually focus on some of those larger commercial clinics. Each cartridge sells for between $80 to $100, and our COGS will be set below $40. So that again, represents a huge margin for us, and again, a great return on investment for our shareholders. Marjan, do you have anything from a governance perspective on those revenue targets?
Yeah, thanks, mate. Look, from my perspective, again, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but really what we're focusing on as a key KPI for us are contracted sales. Now, there are markets that we can pay in right now. I've already got the tickets to some of these markets, and we're currently playing. Okay, so those revenue targets and actual cash being generated will occur from markets like Japan, which we already do, and New Zealand, right? So that's cash in the bank. Others are contingent upon the CE ticket I spoke about previously, and the Middle East is one of those. So we're really focused on making sure that we get the contracted sales at 2 million, minimum of 2 million. But then again, I'm the pain in David's, where when it comes to his targets. So we're very much focused on exceeding the contracted sales for this particular financial year. David did mention the COGS. The COGS will get to below $40. We're not there yet. There are plans in place, and I've been intimately involved with David in understanding what they are. So when we do get to scale, and this is why scale is so important, I can't get COGS down if we're making 3 cartridges. It doesn't work that way, right? We need to have a compelling reason for a toll manufacturer to get into bed with us, and holding up $2 million worth of recurring revenues gives me that compelling reason for potential toll manufacturers to partner with us. So not only is it important from a dollars and cents perspective moving forward, but it is also critical in allowing us to have the leverage that we need to have the negotiations and discussions around what it's going to cost to actually manufacture these devices. And as David pointed out, I'll eat my hat if the cartridge costs more than $40 to make by the time we get through this process.
You touched on, David, Japan and New Zealand. Why are you prioritising low regulation jurisdictions like these?
Well, I mean, first of all, the opportunity is immediate, David. And, getting to market's all about speed and evidence that you can do that, and being able to determine and show commercial validation, which is what we're trying to achieve in those low regulatory markets. Clearly Japan, New Zealand, and Canada, we can sell now, we can generate revenue, and we can, importantly, build real world data. And the experience through that real world data will actually give and serve and provide ongoing momentum and accelerate the acceptance of the Felix device into then once we have those approved larger CE markets in place. And I think that you start in these markets, get the experience, and then you'll be able to move into a bigger global commercialization with a lot more grunt behind you.
Marjan, question. Well, it's a few questions, but I'm going to group them all together. In relation to the current funding round, there's a question here: how long does this funding last, and why not raise more money now?
You always want to raise more money. Can I be very frank? We're at 0.3 cents, and we've got a wonderful pipeline of potential announcements that we believe we will be announcing over the next short term. So what we're going to basically do with the rights issue, we'll get close to $2 million in revenues in funding for us. And if you would have seen in the last announcement that we've made, we have done significantly well in reducing our spend to make sure that every dollar that a shareholder gives us maximum opportunity to extend our runway. So we're very comfortable that we will have enough cash to keep us going and get manufacturing up and running up until the back end of next year. By that stage, I'm very, very confident in David's and the team's capability in delivering the commercial contracts that we have spoken to date, right? And with that, we drive shareholder value. And with the shareholder value, we hopefully drive an improvement in the current share price, which will do everyone a lot of good. And we will then look at what it is that we need to do to make sure that we are capitalized appropriately to take us to the next level. Remembering what David said is the IVF community is not particularly large. There's only about 6,000 clinics across the globe. Everyone speaks to everyone. We get the model right in places like Japan and New Zealand. That's our template for when we get the ticket to the big game in Europe, which opens up other places like India. And obviously, we've got revenues coming in the Middle East as well. So we really want to make sure that we're prudent about two things, raising at the right level. And there's always an argument both ways there. But much more importantly, as a shareholder and a long-term ASX executive, we value every single dollar a shareholder gives us, and we want to make sure that we get a special bang for buck for everything we do and squeeze every last piece of value out of it. That's my commitment and the board's commitment to the shareholders moving forward.
Question here in relation to the business model. We've heard over time, and it's been mentioned here by a couple of people, that sales were talked about historically, and people believed or thought sales would have happened in different forms by now. Are clinics actually willing to pay for Felix at the prices you've set?
Yes, I think, David, they are. I mean, clearly, with the experience that we've had, and we've spoken to a number of clinics, that the economics simply work because of the clinical prowess of Felix, but also the time saving in terms of the overall process. The cartridges cost between $80 to $150 each, and whilst that's generating revenue, it's just not the cost to the clinic. It's actually a profit driver for the IVF labs because they can actually employ. They don't have to put an embryologist on the line, for example, who is quite expensive to do the sperm preparation. They can employ a cheaper a staff member to actually do the same process. So that clearly from a process perspective, the economics is a standout, and clinics are already talking to us about how they can improve their workflow with the Felix device and save money.
And what about competitors? This Felix has been around for some time now. What's stopping competitors coming into the market?
Felix is covered by more than 14 patents, and those patents cover the hardware, the membrane, and the processes. So I think that from a patent point of view, we have a reasonable protection for the device, and it's quite a complex device within itself. So actually copying it won't be that easy. Marjan, do you have anything to add around the IP from the board's perspective?
Yeah, I do. Don't know if it's valuable, but let's. I'm going to put on my grubby commercial hat because that's what I am. And as a CEO, the way I see this is that we really do offer the opportunity to IVF clinics to grow the business and that they're generating by increasing the number of babies they can churn out from their existing infrastructure, right? They don't need to invest anymore. They don't need to grow any bigger. They don't need additional staff because with our technology, and I've had discussions with quite a number of doctors, and we might argue about whether we give better sperm or not better sperm or whatever else the arguments may be. But at the end of the day, no one argues that we're at least as good. No one. But what I can say with hand on glove, instead of taking 45 minutes to process one of these things, it takes 6. I'll improve your throughput fourfold at the very least, and each throughput leads to a $15,000 cycle, which you don't need any more people to deliver and any more resources to deliver.
Mm.
And really, once we're incorporated into the way the clinics and labs work, and you get ISO accreditation and people build their systems around the new process on the back of that value proposition, they can't chuck you out easily. They just can't. So forget about patents. When we become part of their fabric and part of their workflow, we become very, very, very difficult to dislodge.
Yeah.
Particularly with David's plans around making sure that we've also got an end-to-end client management, key account management process. The contract, which we've already got, is the start of the journey. That's not where it ends, right? That relationship builds a moat around our business.
Another question here on financials. How are you managing cash burn and funding requirements? I know you touched on it in the presentation, but clearly shareholders have got a couple of questions around that.
Well, I think that's a very good question, David, and a very important one. And I think that the fact that we're continuing to reduce operational costs, recently we've reduced our operational costs again by about 40%, down to 1.8 million. So we're running, very lean, very mean, and to make sure all the money that we're spending is actually spent in an extremely highly focused manner. We've recently raised $840,000, and we're looking to raise another 1.12 million through a rights issue. But all of that is going to be directed towards Felix and Felix's commercialization. And part of that whole process is to actually drive costs down. In terms of looking at our costs, to strengthen the margins that the product has. Per cartridge. Marjan, would you like to add anything to that?
No, but I think you've said it very nicely. And the thing is, as I said, nothing's more important to me than making sure that our shareholders' investment in us gets used properly. And I'm going to be putting money in this raise. And I have, and I'd put more if I possibly could, and I will. But I mean, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that every dollar that we collect from our shareholders who want to invest in our organization gets optimized, and we are frugal in what we spend our cash on. The organization really has so many opportunities, so it's really easy to get caught up in chasing this, that, and whatever else, right? To David's point, laser focus on selling Felix, that is it.
Yep.
But we will not be talking about Rockstar or anything else, which is wonderful technology, until we get Felix sorted and demonstrate to you, the shareholders, that we can actually commercialize a technology. That's my goal, and that's the board's goal.
A pretty direct question here, so I'm just going to put it to you as received. Credibility. Why is this time different to the past promises that have been made?
Well, look, I think it's very different, David, and I think that's a very, very good question. I think we've now that we have a trial finished, we have CE mark in process, we have some major contracts, being signed up where we can, now deliver. We're changing the way internally that we operate and our strategy. We're actually now going through a commercial execution process, and as I said before, we've already validated Felix, we've validated the platform. It's there, but now it's time to move on and continue to commercialize it. So we're now executing, which is completely different to where we were in the past. Over the past years, over this past year, we've cut costs immensely, and we're now running the company very, very lean. We've changed our sales model to a direct sales model, and I think that that's very important because we'll be able to engage directly with our customers. We've signed a huge agreement with International Technical Legacy in the Middle East. We've lodged our CE mark, and once we have that, we'll be well positioned to sell globally. We've already secured early revenue in Japan, But the important thing here is that we're not relying on distributors, and we're not waiting for other people to help build our market. We're actually going out there and doing it ourselves, and I think that that's the best way to do it. And we want to make sure that we differentiate ourselves from other companies where they might just give their products out to distributors. But I think by the direct sales approach that we're having, we're actually making sure that every experience that a customer has with Felix is, well, every first experience that they have with Felix is the best experience. And I think that that's so important in selling to customers. You have to make sure that the first time that they use the device is their best experience. And once you achieve that, I think it's a very quick way of winning them over to to repeat sales and an ongoing relationship.
Marjan, anything
Yeah,
to add there?
I might just add something to that. And I've been a shareholder for almost 10 years. So one thing I've learned in my career is that credibility is earned, and we haven't earned that yet. But what I can say, I'm not going to repeat everything David said, but what I can say is to the shareholders here today, when was the last time you saw a presentation as focused as the one you saw today, where the only thing you heard about was Felix? When was the last time, if ever, that you've seen a contract that was linked to revenue commitments from a client? I know when I saw it, I haven't. When was the last time that we've been able to say we've got a plan that allows us to focus on Felix and Felix only and commercialization in markets where we could have been selling this stuff years ago and we weren't? So we need to earn the credibility, but I'm pretty confident that this is a good first couple of steps. And all I'd say to shareholders is watch this space. There'll be a lot more coming from various markets around the world on the back of CE Mark, the ticket that we spoke about to the game, and to the benefits that Felix will bring to our clients or our clients' clients moving forward, right? So I'll just leave it there and say we haven't earned anything, if you will, credibility and accountability for us. I'm hoping that the contract has bought us the ticket to prove that to you, the shareholders, moving forward, and we intend to do that.
Last couple of questions. I am conscious of time. Professor or Laureate Professor John Aitken, how's John fitting into the strategy, and how's he feeling or part of the strategy moving forward?
I could answer that very quickly, David. I think that's a great question because he's obviously a scientist and an academic. However, we're refocusing what John's doing in terms of the commercialization process, and I think that John is a globally recognized key opinion leader in sperm biology and sperm technology. And what we're going to be doing with John is using his network to help us facilitate, and his skills, his knowledge to help us facilitate the commercialization process. And I think that he is still, a highly valuable member of the team, but it's just a matter of, refocusing some of what he does into that commercialization process. And from a work perspective, I think he's quite happy with that because he realizes that, we need to generate revenue. The shareholders have paid money for a long time to get to where we've got to, and we need to start realizing the value for them. And he's completely on board with that as far as I'm aware.
Last question. Now, there's some pretty clear assumptions here, and I'm not asking either of you to provide a forecast. And I will note this has come from an anonymous attendee, so I'm definitely not trying to set either of you up. But assuming CE approval comes in on time and the projected revenues are achieved, where do you see this company in 12 to 18 months from now?
If I could just make a brief statement, I could see it as a global company, and I can see us having access into all the major global markets. And I also see it doing very well in the competitive space because I think that given our cost of goods, our focus, our strategy, I think I see the company being, very successful in generating revenue on a global basis in, especially in the large target markets. Marjan, if you have anything to
Yeah,
add to that.
sure. I think one of the things that I'm particularly motivated by is focus. So not only are we focused on Felix and commercialization, we in no way intend to take on the entire earth in one hit.
Mm.
12 to 18 months, to be very honest with you, and David's speaking the same language, of course, but our global footprint will be Japan, New Zealand, Australia, Middle East, India, and Europe. That's it. We're not doing anything else. We can't afford to. We don't have the bandwidth and we don't want to. Everything else will follow on the back of those things because they are immediate term revenue opportunities for us.
Yep.
The EU is the largest market in the world for IVF. And we're kidding ourselves if we think that we're going to get that sorted in 12 to 18 months. As I said, the CE mark buys us a ticket to the game, but the game's going to last a little longer than 12 months. So our focus is on the markets that are going to be generating revenues for us right now. Other markets like the US with FDA approval, South America's and things like that, they're decisions we're going to make later down the track once and only once we're generating significant revenues and have a business model that's replicatable in the key markets that I've just outlined. We're not putting money anywhere else until we get that right. And I want to make that very clear to the shareholders. Your cash is our cash, and that cash is getting invested into short-term revenues. And there's a lot to be had in Europe and the markets I've just outlined. Full stop.
On that note, full stop on questions. We have exhausted all the questions that have come through. So thank you, David, and thank you, Marjan, for addressing those questions so openly. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the commercialisation of Felix and the CE mark process through to funding, partnerships, and market strategy. On behalf of Memphasys, I'd like to thank all shareholders and attendees for joining us today. If we didn't get to your question, and I'm pretty confident we got to all of them, but I must say I grouped a few together, please contact the company directly and the team will be happy to follow up. We look forward to keeping you updated as Memphasys continues to execute its strategy and move closer to significant commercial milestones. Thank you again, gents.
Thank you.